So today I would like to talk about WandaVision. Specifically, I would like to do an analysis of the show, the character, and the dialogue around the show. Of course, there will be spoilers, and I will be going a little wild, so apologies beforehand. All right. WandaVision takes place at the starting point about 3 weeks after this return snap from Endgame, which brought everybody back, including Wanda. So this is about 2023. We find Wanda and Vision, who we had last seen, had been killed by Thanos about 5 years ago in Infinity War. And they're in this like black and white 1950s styled sitcom. And as the show progresses, we begin to see them work through the decades via sitcoms. So it goes from like Dick Van Dyke and Bewitched through Growing Pains and Family Ties, all the way to The Office and Modern Family. And as we're going through time, we become more acquainted with the town of Westview, New Jersey, and with Wanda's traumas. So Wanda Maximoff made her debut in the MCU, it rhymed, in Avengers Age of Ultron, along with Vision, and she returned for Captain America Civil War and for the double feature Phase 3 ending, which is Infinity War and Endgame. In these 4 movies, Wanda barely has about 30 minutes of screen time, but she does have a wealth of backstory, agony, and power. She is one of the most powerful Avengers. It's stated that she could have single-handedly defeated Thanos had he not ordered the Blitz. I hope I used the right word there. And she was the only Avenger, besides maybe Captain Marvel, who could have done that. So all this is to say that Wanda deserves some real depth and coverage, and we got that in WandaVision for better or worse. So now to go into the background on Wanda Maximoff. So Wanda and her twin brother Pietro were born in Sokovia in 1989 when they were 10 years old. That makes it 1999. Her parents were killed in a bombing while the family was gathered around the TV watching Dick Van Dyke. Another bomb landed beside the bed that her and Pietro took refuge under. A Stark bomb loomed over the children, beeping the sound of their imminent doom for 2 days. Luckily, the bomb did not go off. Or was it luck? Perhaps it was probability? At 19, so 2008, she and Pietro volunteered to join Hydra. They wanted to change the world. From their perspective, Tony Stark and all that he stood for was evil. And Hydra specifically, Strucker, did experiments on them with the scepter, which of course holds the Mind Stone. All of the other volunteers died but them. Wanda, we see in the show, interacted with the Mind Stone and she saw the Scarlet Witch. Interesting. Then comes the events of Age of Ultron. And she and Pietro work with Ultron at first to take down Stark and the Avengers. Upon realizing Ultron's true evil intentions, though, the twins turn on him and reluctantly join up with the Avengers. And after getting a lackluster but moving pep talk from Hawkeye, Wanda steps up and really helps out. Unfortunately, Pietro, though, is killed, and it is devastating. Seriously, go back and watch Age of Ultron, which I don't think is anyone's favorite. It's tragic. I sobbed like a 4-year-old who dropped an ice cream cone and skinned their knee. So anyway, Vision, saves her in Sokovia and flies her to safety, and then we see in WandaVision at the Avengers complex that these two start to become very, very close. In Captain America's Civil War, Wanda is out on the field with the rest of our heroes in Lagos. Crossbones, a bad guy, sets off an explosion which Wanda tries to divert, and sadly the bomb ends up going off and kills a group of Wakandans. Wanda experiences tremendous guilt over this and realizes that people will always see her as a villain. Truth. We'll get to that. But on a side, I do want to say that this is in no way, shape, or form Wanda's fault whatsoever. And I still see today that people still kind of blame her for this, and it doesn't make any sense. That's fully on Crossbones. 100% on Crossbones. No percent on Wanda. All on Crossbones. Anyway. So the Civil War stuff happens, blah, blah, blah. We have a dick measuring contest between Cap and Tony. Wanda is on Cap's side. The right side. While Vision is on her Tony's side, which is awkward. And I'll bring up Bucky later in the conversation. So that brings us to Infinity War and Endgame. So Wanda and Vision at the beginning of Infinity War are official. Wanda, of course, is an outlaw because of the fallout with Civil War, and specifically the Soviet Accords. Vision is not, but they are in hiding together, sort of, and Vision gets attacked by the Thanos' children, and blah, blah, blah. It's decided that Wanda needs to destroy the Mind Stone, which is in Vision's head, so that Thanos can't get it. So she does. I mean, and that power is magnificent. And she, in doing so, had to kill Vision, only to have Thanos use the Time Stone, rewind, bring Vision back, and then kill him in front of her. And then she got dusted in the snap. Yikes. So 5 years later for us, but mere moments for Wanda, she returns to the epic final boss fight where she confronts her purple nemesis, and she, again, could have defeated him had it not been for the Blitz, because he took everything from her. Okay, we know the events of Endgame. So sometime after Tony's funeral, Wanda goes to SWORD headquarters and meets director Tyler Hayward, and she wants to get Vision's body, which they have been dismantling and experimenting on for 5 years now. She just wants to give him a funeral. To quote her, "He deserves it. I deserve it." And she totally does. And Hayward, being a douche, antagonizes her, but she's the bigger person. She leaves. And she drives. How does she have a car? Are the Soviet Accords not a thing anymore? Like, is she no longer an outlaw? I have questions. She goes to Westview, New Jersey, and there she has the deed to a lot that is for a house that Vision left her to, quote, grow old in. How did Vision buy a house? What is Vision's wealth? What do the Avengers pay? Like, what's his salary? Or did he have a side job on, like, was he playing the market? Was he a gambler? Dude, Vision can make bank gambling. So, in a moment where Wanda felt sad, alone, nothingness, her powers explode out of her, and she created WandaVision, a hexagonal TV hellscape. So now to talk about the show within a show. In a moment of severe depression and grief, Wanda's power took over and she brought back a vision of her love. Vision. You know, Vision's initials are The Vision, TV. I just realized that. Anyway. As well as she transformed an entire town around her into her safe space. Sitcoms. In her dissociative state persists well into the series as she slowly begins to realize that not only is something wrong, but that she's the cause of it. And as the episodes, in reality days, progress, she becomes more aware and begins to work through her traumas and grief. She also has twins, Billy and Tommy. I think they're in there kind of suddenly, but the show did too, so okay. As audience members, we are privy to Vision's actions, and we see that he removes Wanda's influence from a few Westview citizens, for instance, Norm, and we learn that, you know, the population of Westview is in pain, and they long for a release from Wanda's control. They are being held captive, and Vision wants to help free them, and he confronts Wanda. I'll get back to this later, and that's not necessarily the best move. They should have had a more calm conversation over a loud confrontation, but whatever. When confronted by reality, Wanda rejects it. For instance, we see rewinds time when we see the beekeeper come out of the sewer, which I would too. That was terrifying, and fuck bees. We see that she blinks back when Vision first raised questions about his suspicions regarding Westview. She blasted Monica through 4 walls, fourth wall, and out of the hex and into the real world. She keeps kind of trying to gaslight poor Vision. She's like, but it's seemingly, but really she's just shutting down. Yeah. And as things continue to break down, and after Wanda has to expand the perimeter of the hex to save Vision, Wanda begins to become more nihilistic and depressed, and her powers aren't maintaining the hex as well. Monica is later able to re-enter the hex, and she again confronts Wanda about what Hayward and Sword are doing, specifically regarding Vision, and Hayward is kind of making Wanda the villain, and Monica doesn't want that for Wanda or for the townspeople of Westview. Then we get the nosy neighbor, Agnes, comes out and kind of shoos Monica away and removes Wanda from the situation. And that's when Wanda begins to look for her children, the twins, in Agnes's creepy bewitched basement. And we get the reveal that we all knew was coming, that Agnes was really... So Agatha rather, has been manipulating situations in the hex, like Pietro, Herb acting strangely, Sparky's death, the monster, and throwing Vision off her trail. And the audience is treated to some reruns where we learn all the stuff that I explained above in backgrounds. Agatha is trying to figure out where Wanda got her powers because she wants them. And begin witch duel. In the end, Wanda wins and places Agatha back into her mind control hellscape, where she's returned to her role as the nosy neighbor. And Wanda now knows that she has to fix things after talking to the Westview populace. She learned under her control that they're in pain. It's poisoning them, her sadness. And, you know, when they dream her dreams. She thought that they were in peace. And seeing that they would rather die than be here any longer, she knows that she must release them and promises to do so. And she does make good on that. So in the end, Wanda, Vision, and Billy and Tommy go home. Wanda and Vision tuck the twins in and tell them that they're proud of them. Wanda repeats a running theme throughout the show, which is family is forever. And then leaving, Wanda says, "Thank you for choosing me to be your mom." In the living room, Wanda and Vision say their goodbyes to each other in the light so that they can see one another. Vision asks Wanda what he is now, and she replies, "You, Vision, are the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in me. You are a body of wires and blood and bone that I created. You are my sadness. You are my hope. But mostly you are my love." I'm getting kind of teary-eyed. Vision notes his many forms, saying, "I have been a voice with no body. I have been a body but not human. And now a memory made real. Who knows what I might be next?" In the final moments he says, "We have said goodbye before again, so it stands to reason," to which Wanda concludes, "We'll say hello again." And Vision's, in this form's, last words are, "So long, darling. But let us not forget that White Vision effed off to who knows where." So this brings us to the conversation. I have found the dialogue outside of this show to be somewhat disturbing and downright aggravating. There are some specific scenes I want to talk about, but the narrative of the show in general as well. I'm going to get a little ranty. A lot ranty. Buckle up. The biggest issue is Wanda is the villain. I heard this everywhere, and I find it extremely problematic for a series of reasons, mainly being female hysteria / crazy woman trope, the lack of compassion regarding mental illness, which makes me really worried about how the MCU is going to handle Moon Knight, who's in one of my favorite comic books. And we literally do not exist in this dichotomy of good and evil. That's some Star Wars bullshit. There are grays, and I like that the MCU generally portrays those grays sort of well. So let's talk about this. The historical woman or crazy woman trope is something that exists and has very real-world consequences. I'll quote the tvtropes.com definition. This trope characterizes women as less rational, disciplined, and emotionally stable than men, and thus more prone to mood swings, irrational overreactions, and mental illness. It is a subgenre of the women are delicate trope and an offshoot of some others. Wanda is not the only character in the MCU or Marvel in general to show signs of mental illness. As we include the comics, far from it. But keeping it specifically to the MCU, the main ones I would say are Tony Stark, Bucky Barnes, and Thor. And if you look at these three characters, you notice they all have something in common, and that is they are all men. So why am I saying that showing Wanda in this way is treating her unfairly? Because they made Wanda the villain. More importantly, as I said, this is about narrative. And I never heard, in terms of dialogue outside of these things, people calling for Bucky Barnes' head because he killed Tony's parents. In the narrative of the film franchise, yes, he's an outlaw. I saw people saying Wanda needed to be punished for her actions in Lagos as well as for her actions in Westview. What? Some going so far as to say she should be killed, or advocating for Monica to, take her out. And Wanda is being treated and viewed by the audience as a bad person when people aren't doing the same to Tony or Bucky, who likewise did some really awful things. I mean, Tony made Ultron. Tony is a arms dealer and arguably, potentially a war criminal. Tony is not a good person. And yet people don't advocate for bad things to happen to him like they do Wanda. The fact that Disney ever depicted Wanda in a villainous light is problematic. Especially since she's one of, 5 primary female characters? Nebula, Gamora, Captain Marvel, Natasha, and Wanda. Right? There are some others, but those are the leading ones. I really want Shuri to be up there. I'm hoping. And the narrative of the show, at the end, shows Wanda as being depicted by, the populace as being a bad person too. Which is an issue. Sometimes calling something a double standard erases the fact that different people, different groups, are treated differently. In a horror movie, you expect people to die. But if the first person who bites the dust is a black man, that sends a different message. There's literally an entire documentary on this subject called Black Noir. It's on Shudder. Totally recommend it. A TV show can kill off a character, but if the one character they kill off is the one queer character or one of two queer characters who's in a couple, that's a problem. It sends a different message. There's the barrier gaze trope. The same logic stands here. Having a woman be the crazy evil one sends a different message. And the proof is in the pudding. I don't understand that idiom, but it is. And it goes back to what I said before. Bucky wasn't called a villain that people wanted punished. Wanda was. And this further hits on two other issues that I mentioned above, which are women are delicate and mental illness. So, Thor and Tony went through a lot of stuff. I think we can all agree on that. No one's denying that. They dealt with loss, perceived failure, their griefs, trauma in their own way. However, Wanda, dealing with similar issues, deals with her trauma by mentally enslaving a town's worth of people. Population, words are hard. 3,892, I believe the show said. In this TV horror dimension hexagon. And Disney literally made the woman who was mentally ill hurt other people. They didn't have the men do that. You're starting to see the difference, I hope. I'm explaining this well. And this goes into the women are too sensitive or too emotional to handle insert anything. Which is similar to the hysterical woman trope. And I don't know if you were paying attention in 2016 or 2020, but I was. And it doesn't matter your thoughts on Hillary or Elizabeth Warren. But the narrative was the same, in which our women are too sensitive to, again, literally insert anything. And that shouldn't be the narrative anymore. And don't get me started on PMS and, how all these kinds of things are used against emotions and caring and nurturing and period. And all these things are used against women. They're like weaponized against women. And this show portraying Wanda as being emotionally distraught villain has real world consequences because it goes into that dialogue and it reinforces those negative, incorrect stereotypes for people. Let's look at the Me Too movement. Believe all women. This week trending for me was too many women. How often do people not believe women when they say something happened to them? Do cops not believe women? Family, teachers, so on and so forth. How often do women not get the promotion? How often were they not allowed to enter a field? And the list goes on and on and on. And shifting back to mental illness, Wanda is literally dissociating from reality. She created her own. You don't get, more dissociative than that. She was not aware of what she was doing at first. That's made clear. Through the episode, she begins to become more and more aware of what she's doing, and she works through the moral ramifications of her actions. It was not her intent to hurt anyone. And intent absolutely has to matter. There are instances where someone can commit a crime and not be aware or in control of their behavior. That person doesn't deserve to be punished. They deserve help. Wanda deserves help, not criticism, compassion, not imprisonment. There were problems, for instance, with Thor's depression. Having him gain weight was fine and kind of tracks with how some people deal with depression. But having characters crack fat jokes is where it fell short in terms of handling serious material in the MCU. So it's, sometimes they hit the mark and sometimes they fall short. And I get that. But this is where it really fell short for me. Is where some of the audience was left thinking Wanda was a bad person who needs to be penalized for her actions. A thoughtful, responsible writer would have ensured that was not the case. We would have had more at the end with Wanda and Monica and the Sword and Jimmy's FBI buddies coming in. It would have been made more clear that Wanda didn't have to F off and be in, a cabin by herself. Which, that would be fine, but, being outcasted to that situation was not. Unless they want her to look more villainous for whatever her role will be in Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, in which case, that's worse. That is so much worse. Making her the villain outright would be so effing much worse. There exists grays in the world. Not everything is clear-cut good and evil. Someone can do something absolutely heinous and not be morally responsible for that because they literally just weren't in control. And there were other issues as well, like Wanda and Vision arguing, that scene where they both go up in the air. I heard people wanting them to fight, physically fight. And are you joking? They're a married couple. They have children upstairs. You're advocating literally for domestic violence. And yeah, I'm taking this too seriously. But there's just so many little things in the show that it really bothered me how I heard people talking about it. When Monica confronts Wanda after she breaks back through the hex and gets her powers, and again, people wanted them to fight. Stop! Stop! That's sad. Disney did the right thing there, and this is where they didn't fall short. And that they didn't have the good guys fight each other. They had them talk and reach out with communication. And this is later seen with Vision v. WandaVision, Vision v. White Vision, and their conversation regarding the ship of Theseus. That made sense. They shouldn't have a, fight, Vision being battled. They should have a conversation. And I know it's a superhero show, but if you're gonna handle these serious topics, you need to handle them with compassion and handle them seriously. These are not simple storylines. And comic books have never really been simple storylines. They often go in these complex real-life issues. They handle these, complex characters. They're just doing them with an unrealistic way in terms of, these characters have powers. but that doesn't mean there aren't real life repercussions to how certain things are shown on screen. So, in conclusion, I've lost my mind. I'm sorry. All this is to say, I loved the show. The acting, the attention to detail, the effects, the going so far out of their way in terms of like the masterclass level of sitcom writing. But overall, the message of WandaVision is one that is very female negative and very mental illness negative, and it portrays women experience trauma as villainous, and villains that should be held accountable for their behavior that was quite literally not their fucking fault. Moreover, it is entirely about the crazy woman trope. It's about a woman who couldn't handle her grief and her powers and losing it and basically mentally enslaving a town for a week. And this perpetuates very, very negative real-life stereotypes about women and their abilities to function in life. This was very long. Sorry. I got kind of angry at the end. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the show? What did you think? What do you think about the dialogue and narrative? Feel free to comment below. Feel free to recommend anything I do on a video later on. Thank you so much if you watched this whole thing. Like, so much. Like, so much. Have a fantastic day, and bye.